So there was one or two kind of topics, concepts that I left out from Friday that we need to cover today. So on your quiz tomorrow, we're going to do everything that we did Friday's homework, okay? Finding the y-intercept, finding the axis of symmetry, the equation for the axis of symmetry, finding the vertex, coming up with some points. That's all going to be on your quiz. And then what we're going to cover here today is also going to be on your quiz. Okay? Now, this is on page 534 in your book if you want to screenshot it. If you want to take a picture of the screen, you can do that as well. But go ahead and get that situated in your notes, and then I'll talk through it all so we can figure out what's going on here. So there's a couple things going on this page that I need to draw your attention to. One of the things you found out while you were doing the graphs from Friday is that it is possible for a parabola to open down. Okay, that's going to happen specifically when A is negative. So over here on the right, when A is negative, the parabola will open down. When A is positive, as all the other problems were, the parabola will open up. Now, here's the things that you need to keep in mind with respect to that. When a parabola opens up, the vertex will contain the minimum value. And so the y-coordinate of the vertex is going to be the minimum value for that quadratic. So when we're working on our homework today, you are still going to have to find the vertex. And then you pick the y-coordinate off, and that also serves as your minimum value, because if you notice here, there are no values smaller than that vertex. Okay? Everything from that y on up is going to be part of the graph, and we're going to talk about domain and range here in a minute. Okay? When A is negative, we have a point that it's at its sort of at its peak, and everything below that is smaller than it. So what I end up with is having a maximum value there, and again, the y-coordinate of the vertex is going to be the maximum value. So you can think about it in a couple different ways. If the parabola opens up, the vertex is the bottom or lowest point. When the parabola opens down, the vertex is the highest or maximum value for that function. And that's really what the rest of this section is all about, identifying the maximum and minimum. And you can do that without graphing, because if you know which direction it opens because of the A, then you know whether or not there's a minimum or maximum. In either case, you still have to find the vertex, okay? Because the y value is the minimum or maximum. It's all about that y value. That y value is the minimum or maximum. And you just have to decide, based off of what A is, whether there will be a minimum or maximum, okay? Now, we've found domain and range from graphs before. And we're going to do that again specifically for these types of quadratics. So that's for a second. And Ryan just mentioned it. Is this kind of like the boundaries that we talked about before? And it's exactly like the boundaries. So, for example, on the graph that opens up, we have a bottom boundary. So the range is going to be at that y value or greater than that y value when A is positive, meaning it opens up. When A is negative and it opens down, we have that maximum value, so it can be that top y value or everything below it. Now, that concept that we used before, you can still draw the graph and find the range from it, but for your homework today, you don't have to do it with the graph. The understanding is that if it opens up, there's a minimum, and the y value is from that minimum on up forever. If A is negative and it opens down, then it's that y value is its highest and then less than that part. Okay, domain and range from a graph. 4 quadratics. All right? And we've looked at these before. For x, the domain. There's always going to be an x that lines up with the graph somewhere. So whenever we talk about quadratic functions, the domain, look back at this graph, will always be all real numbers. You, of course, can write the script R if you wish, or you can write all real numbers, but those are your two options. One of those two things for the domain. For quadratics, the domain will always be all real numbers. For the range, I'm going to flip back to the other slide and we're going to talk about it a little bit. So it looks like you either have the range greater than or equal to the minimum value. Y is greater than or equal to that minimum value. And again, remember that minimum value is the y coordinate of the vertex. This is true for when the parabola opens up, which means A is positive. Or we have a maximum. Your range for your quadratics is going to be one of these two. And here's how you tell the difference. Okay? If we're talking about a minimum value, we're telling you that A is positive. Because when A is positive and the parabola opens up, there is only a minimum value. There is no maximum value. It goes up, on and on, forever up. So it would be actually positive infinity. Okay? When the range has a maximum value and is less than or equal to the maximum value, what we're telling you is that A is negative. It's less than 0. So it opens down. And we can figure all of this out without drawing the graph. Bless you. Okay? So here's what you've got to do for tonight's homework. Okay? You're going to have to determine whether or not there's a minimum and maximum. Well, in order to do that, you have to know what the sign of A is. Okay? If A is positive, there's a minimum. If A is negative and it opens down, there's a maximum. So that's the first thing. Is it minimum or maximum? Then you find that y value. And the way you find that y value is you find the vertex. Well, so that goes back to the stuff we were doing on Friday. In order to find the vertex, you got to first find the x-coordinate of the vertex. And how do we do that?
You got to do the axis of symmetry equation.
The axis of symmetry equation, which is
A over negative 2, or B over
negative B over 2A. So on your homework today, that's what you're doing. You're first finding the x-coordinate by using the axis of symmetry equation. Then you're going to take that, plug it in to find the y-coordinate that goes with that for the vertex. And that's going to be how you write your range. The minimum value is just the y value. The maximum value is just the y value. But it just depends on which way the parabola opens. And you can tell that by whether or not A is positive or it is negative. Okay? Be careful with your signs today. There's some tricky ones in there. Okay? But everything that you did on Friday, you're going to basically do today, except we're going to decide domain and range. You're going to decide minimum or maximum, and you don't have to graph. Okay?